going on, fam? I'm going to do it again because it seems like every time I do, YouTube takes my videos down. They've changed the format up. They don't like it. I don't care. I didn't have many followers the first time, and I got less now on the second channel this time, but it's still not going to stop me from sharing the Father's truth. Now, first thing I want to say, if you're following the Gregorian calendar, the calendar on the wall, the calendar that we buy, that tells us when the first of the year is January 1st, we're deceived. The Father's calendar is his holy days, his Sabbath, his new moon days. None of those days are found on that Gregorian calendar. It mimics the Father's calendar. Pray. If you don't see it, pray to the Father. I didn't see it. I'm 60 years old and I just found this calendar almost 3 years now. Almost. About two and a half years now. Listen, about 2 years. It's been about almost 2 years now. But listen to this. There's the scriptures. I can only give you a testimony of my walk only. I'm not here to convince you, to tell you, what to believe or how to go about it. Okay. I'm just sharing my testimony. One thing's for certain, two things for sure. The Father's new moons, which are holy in the Bible, they're holy. They're worship days. If his new moons, his weekly Sabbath, and his feast days, his moedims, they're all holy to the Father. He gave them to us for us to follow. If you believe the Father had taken his holy days and taught the children of Israel in the wilderness his holy days, and they put them on a Gregorian calendar that was established in 1582, you're deceived. The scripture says that Satan will deceive the whole world. It's the only calendar in the world right now that is the whole world follows. The whole world follows it. Okay. An example in the Dead Sea Scrolls, on page 384 on the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's one, two, after the three. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraph. 4 paragraph down. It would be this paragraph right here. This is the last of the 5th calendar that they found traces of history. That's the 4th method, and it's the 3rd method, goes back to 2nd and 1st method. But in this section here, it says, in the Western world, we take the calendar for granted. But this is the 1st century in history in which all major cultures use the same calendar, the Gregorian calendar. Even quite recently, travel across certain borders in Europe entailed a 13-day shift in the date. Only in 1923 did the Greeks embrace the current Gregorian calendar. France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Luxembourg, Germany, had adopted it in the they have adopted this calendar in 1582. That was when it was established. The Russian Orthodox Church and several Middle Eastern Christian groups still reckon by the old Julian calendar, now fallen nearly 14 days behind the Gregorian. They want to let you know that, okay? That's the Julian calendar. You got to check it out. Satan has been everywhere. Now they want to point that out. That calendar there is 14 days behind the solar calendar of Gregorian. Okay. Now falling nearly behind, 14 days behind the Gregorian. These differences are not something we really fight about anymore, but we once did. History is replete with Christian imbroglios over the date of Easter, because we know when Easter is. It's not April 1st. It's not Easter. It's in the month of Abib, first fruits. Let's see. Eventually, these were calendar controversies. Medieval rabbinic Jews likewise fought neighboring Karaite Jews about which of the two calendars ought to regulate life. This was the climate in which the Dead Sea Scrolls were written. Just letting you know, when the Dead Sea Scrolls The authors got together and started writing it. That was the arguments they were having back then in that era about the calendar. To me, is what I'm seeing, excuse me, is the spirit of the anti-Messiah already at work, putting in controversy. You got to remember, got to read the history. The Pharisees of the time were over the people, over the Hebrews, and they wanted to remain in control over the people. And what did they do? They blended with the Roman Empire. And the rabbinic Jews at the time blended with the Roman papacy because the empire was Roman. It was the major dominance, and they wanted to stay in control. Well, we'll follow you guys, but we're going to be in control of the Hebrews, okay? The Israelites. So, but when they started switching over to the calendar, the Israelites didn't follow it. They didn't follow it. They knew the Father's calendar. They knew the Father's new moons. They knew his weekly Sabbath and his feasts. So they didn't follow it. And they were being persecuted for that. It's now where we live right now in this time. It took this time where everybody started slowly going back to the Gregorian calendar. They were following along with it, and we've lost our way to the Father's Sabbath. But it says, I believe somewhere in Jubilees, chapter 23, somewhere in Jubilees, that the children will find their way back. It starts looking and going back and finding a way to the Father's word and his Sabbath and his feast days, all of that. It says in Enoch that we are in the last days. I believe we are. I think we're the last generation, the remote generation, our children, our grandchildren. I'm only 60. So this is we have to understand, if you read in this Dead Sea Scroll, you will find on page 383, there was a gentleman it was a medieval writer called Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni was the one that is telling you that there was a sect of Jews, a small group of Jews they were called cave dwellers, the Yahad, or the descendants of the Yahads. They're not really sure. This group followed a lunar calendar in which a month began with a full moon. That's the opposite of what Enoch was told. And Al-Biruni wrote their practice when it stood in opposition to the customs of the majority of the Jews, most of the Israelites. They weren't called Jews, they were Israelites. And the prescriptions of the Torah, the law, they went against it. So there's a lot of people today thinking they're going back to the Father's calendar. There's 5 ways, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's 5 different ways how they did that. And when I read through each of them, there's a little bit of truth in each, but not one mentions the procedures of Enoch, the writings of Enoch, of how Enoch was told. These are different sects or groups of different people that take a little bit of truth, but they fell on themselves, on their own minds of how the things worked out. The first one was a 364-day year, and the second one was a 3-year lunar cycle, months. I'm telling you, Satan was there, twisting and turning everything. So we're now trying to find our way back. But just know one thing for sure. I can't tell you which one you should follow. I don't follow none of these. 5, I don't follow. Why? I don't, because they don't mention the Father's new moon. The the Egyptians did. They followed it, and the Samaritans followed it. That's Satan finding their way. But if you continue to read how they followed that new moon and how they follow the Father's Sabbath, it's just a little twist. They're a little bit off. Just a little bit off. Yeah, it's just a little bit off. And we can find how Enoch was shown the luminaries of the Father's luminaries by the archangel Uriel, and Enoch was shown all that. He wrote it down, and he was shown that stuff, and he was told to go back and teach. So he taught his son Methuselah, and Methuselah, we know, is the oldest man on the earth before the Father wiped it out. But he had time to teach it to the children. That's why we're following our way, finding our way back. We got to get off that Gregorian calendar. The Father's Sabbath is not on there. If you believe it's every Saturday Sabbath, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. That Sabbath there does not recognize the Father's moon. The new moon determines when the first Sabbath of each month comes. The new moon does. And we have to honor that because that's the Father's new moon. That's his holy day, not ours. But the phases of the moon is the only one in the sky that has phases in it That's why the Father said the moon is for the Mohadems, appointed times, his times, when we're supposed to meet him. You're not going to find it on the Gregorian calendar because the Gregorian calendar does not recognize it. It's a solar only calendar. They don't worship our Messiah. They don't. They worship the sun. So we gotta, I don't know. It's just something to look into and to pray on. Definitely pray on. You guys have a blessed one. Baruch haba Bashem Yahuwah. Shalom.